Ken Bruce's fans have flocked to social media to express their support for his new move to Greatest Hits Radio, as they claimed Radio 2 is over following his departure. Ken Bruce, 71, has received an outpouring of support from his loyal fans this week as he announced his move to Greatest Hits Radio after his exit from BBC Radio 2. The legendary radio DJ will be joining the broadcaster in April as Scott Mills faces backlash over some listeners' suspicions he may be a candidate to replace Ken. Greatest Hits Radio announced the big news on Tuesday in a tweet featuring a video of Ken saying it was time to try something a little bit different. In the clip, Ken said he hoped people would say, "Sorry to hear you're going, Ken, but maybe I'll try and find you and follow you wherever it is you're going." The radio station revealed, "We've been keeping a big secret. We are delighted to announce that legendary broadcaster at Real Ken Bruce will be joining the Greatest Hits Radio family in April." Hundreds of fans replied to the tweet expressing their delight over the big announcement. Sadler5 Sue said, "We'll definitely follow Ken to at Greatest Hits UK Radio 2 is so over now." Borlace Gillian added, "Had never heard of Greatest Hits Radio. I have now and will be listening to this station when Ken joins." Tiz_Tiff tweeted, "Looks like this is my new radio station to listen to at work starting April then, sick." New Harpsichord typed, "Congrats to the team at Greatest Hits Radio, you will have a new listener with me. And I suspect many, many others." The news comes as Scott Mills has been dragged into the fury from BBC Radio 2 listeners, who have been sharing their dismay over Ken's Radio 2 exit. When Ken left the show after 31 years of hosting, listeners began speculating who could potentially replace the stalwart presenter, with some suggesting Scott could be an option. The 49-year-old left BBC Radio 1 in August to switch over to Radio 2 and take over Steve Wright's very popular early afternoon slot, which has led some listeners to think something similar might have happened with Ken. Steve, who spent 23 years at the radio station, announced he would be stepping down from daytime radio in September when Scott announced he'd be taking over. Lucy fumed, "It's so sad to see Ken Bruce leave Radio 2. Another legend is leaving. I don't want to keep listening to Scott Mills." David tweeted, "Dear BBC. Please 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 don't even think of replacing the legendary Ken B with that bloke Scott Mills who does the 2 o'clock slot at BBC Radio 2. Unthinkable." But others came to his defense as Tom said, "Anyone who's piling on Scott Mills because they don't like his Radio 2 show needs to remember, the demographic at Radio 2 is changing. There are a whole bunch of 30-somethings moving over to the station, mainly from Radio 1. You might not like the music, but they probably do." Taking to Twitter, the broadcaster responded to a fan of the Scott Mills show who hit back at the critics, telling him to ignore the old farts. Paula tweeted, "At Scott_Mills for what it's worth, we're within a week of each other age-wise. I've listened to at BBC Radio 2 for a couple of decades now, and your show is an absolute breath of fresh air. Ignore the old farts who forget that they, and their favorites, were all in their 40s way back when." Scott replied, in view of his 1.2 million followers, writing, "Very kind message Paula. Thank you X.